Do you want to visit Romania? Welcome. This is the right place. I am your guide today from Rupea to Saskies. The area where the Rupea Fortress is located is one of the oldest archaeological vestiges on the Romanian territory. The first signs of human settlements dating from the early Paleolithic and Neolithic, 5500 to 3500 BC. Archaeological research has revealed various objects from this epoch testifying of settlements in the region: stone tools, ceramic fragments, funerary urns. The first documentary attestation dates from 1324, when the Saxons rebelled against King Carol Robert of Hungary, took refuge inside the fortress. Between 1432 to 1437, the fortress was attacked and robbed by the Turks. In 1599, Mihai Viteazul's troops on the way to Impellemba besieged the fortress because the community here did not agree with the unification of the three Romanian provinces, Transylvania, Moldova and Wallachia. In 1643, it was abandoned after a devastating fire turned it into ruins. At the end of the same century, the Saxons returned to the fortress to take refuge. In 1716, the walls of the fortress used as a refuge for the survivors of the plague epidemic, which broke out in the locality near the fortress. The fortress was definitively abandoned in 1790 following a severe storm that destroyed its roof. Since then, the fortress is left in comparison until June 2013, when the Rupea Fortress is completely restored. The Rupea Fortress has the shape of an ascending spiral, snail shells. Viscri is one of Romania's most popular attractions for those curious to discover the typical rural life from Transylvania. Although the story begins in the 12th century, responsible of the current fame of this village, besides the fortified church, is Prince Charles and his repeated visits. In Viscri you can experience a unique accommodation opportunity. You can book the traditional Saxon guest house of Prince Charles. It's one of the most beautiful houses in the village, a perfect example of local architecture. The fortified evangelical church in Viscri was built in the 13th century on the basis of an old Roman basilica. The ensemble of the fortified evangelical church consists of the church, the fortified enclosure, with the defensive road, 2 towers, 2 bastions and a gate tower. Since Viscri was never a noble property, only the family of the village ruler was able to raise the dwelling tower in the second half of the 13th century for personal use. The semicircular entrance to the tower is on the eastern side, accessible via a mobile ladder. From the second level upwards, the levels had 1.60 meters high heights, in inwardly recessed niches, intended for archers. The third period of construction, located in the first half of the 16th century, coincides with the fortification of the church. The steep slope from the west, less exposed to the attack, was strengthened in the 17th century by a rectangular wall and 2 towers, the north, with 3 levels being built in 1630 and the west, with 4 levels, built in 1648 to 49. The towers built on the slope of the plateau are much higher on the outside than in the enclosure, where the second ones are at ground level. In the third level, you enter the defense corridor surrounding the enclosure on the inner side, where were the foundry holes and the truss is located at 1.30 meters below the crown of the wall. Both towers of the 17th century have defense corridors with a parapet guard, later dressed in planks. In the 18th century a second wall cordon was built around the fortress, preserved today at a height of only 1 meter, with gaps on the northeast and southeast sides. In the precinct, the defense corridor was replaced by a shed, covered in a single slope, which descends from the crown of the curtain to a shorter wall, raised to 3 to 4 meters distance from the curtain, and having 19 large rectangular entrances. Documentary certificate in 1308. Sashes has 3 objectives. The fortified church was built in 1525. Inside, you can admire the altar, originating in Vienna in 1735, the organ brought from Brasov in 1788, and a Gothic cupcake worked more than 500 years ago. The clock tower, similar to the one in Sighisoara, was damaged during the fire of 1676, after which it received its current form. It was renovated in 1832, but the 1986 earthquake affected it quite hard, and today it is not in the best condition. Unfortunately, you cannot visit inside, and huge cracks are visible on all the facades. The roof of the tower is clad in colored tiles. In addition to the role of defense tower, it also had the role of bell tower and measuring time by the clock painted under the roof ridge and by the wooden statue called Bogdan, which beat every quarter of an hour. The peasant fortress, in an advanced state of degradation, is visible on the hill at 1 kilometer from the church. It was raised in the dry 14 in order to protect the invaders of the inhabitants from here and from the neighboring localities. 4 corner towers and 2 towers were inserted into the enclosure wall, which is about 7 to 9 meters high. The roof of the building was in a single slope, and the firing holes were provided with wooden beams that could be rotated to improve firing. In the courtyard of the citadel there were 2 ponds and a well that reached a depth of 60 to 70 meters, which is said to be a link between the citadel and the center of the village. Sighisoara is documentary attested in the year 1280. The construction of the wall of the fortress, with a length of 950 meters, began in 1350. The original height was 4 meters, but in the 15th century it was raised by another 3 to 4 meters. In the 14th-16th centuries, the guilds of Saxon craftsmen erected towers around the walls of the fortress to protect the city from Turkish attacks. The fortress square is in the heart of the fortress. Here were trade fairs, public executions and witch trials. In 1431, Vlad the Impaler was born here while his father lived in the fortress. Above the entrance hangs a wrought iron dragon. The ground floor serves as a restaurant, while the first floor is the host of the museum. The clock tower was built in the 14th century and extended in the 16th century. After a fire in 1676, when gunpowder deposits exploded in the city located in the Tailor's Tower, Austrian artists rebuilt the roof, and in 1894, colored plates were added. In the 17th century, a clock with 2 plates, with figurines carved from limewood, was placed at the top of the tower. The figures on the side of the fortress are the piece bass, holding an olive branch accompanied by a drummer who beats the hours on his bronze drum. Above them is Justice, with a set of songs and the Law, which carries a sword, accompanied by two angels representing day and night. At 6 a.m. the angel symbolizing the day appears, and at 1800, the angel symbolizing the night carries two burning candles. The dial from the city of Loa presents 7 figures representing the pagan gods who personify the days of the week: Diana, Monday, Mars, Tuesday, Mercury, Wednesday, Jupiter, Thursday, Venus, Friday, Saturn, Saturday, and Sun, Sunday. This complicated two-plate clock has been operating continuously since the Middle Ages. In the Dominican monastery church attested for the first time in a document in 1298, you can admire the bronze font dating from 1440 and the frame of the stone door carved in 1570 in the Transylvanian Renaissance style. Rope Maker's Tower, built in the 13th century, was meant to defend the northwest corner of the hill. The Tower of the Tailors was erected in the 14th century. Its upper part was destroyed in the fire of 1676, when the city's gunpowder deposits exploded. The tower was restored in 1935. The Cobbler's Tower was first mentioned in 16th century documents, but was rebuilt from scratch in 1650. Its roof, like a sharp helmet, houses a small observation tower. The church on the hill was built in 200 years from 1345, and here it is reached by a covered wooden staircase built in 1642 known as the school stairs. The covered passage was meant to protect the church's children and teachers in the winter. Initially, the stairs were 300 steps, but after 1849, their number was reduced to 175. Other sights to see in Sighisoara: Tinsmith's Tower, the Citadel Towers, the Torture Room and the History Museum, the Weapons Collection, the Stag House, the Venetian House, the Lower Town, Lepia's Church, Orthodox Cathedral, St. Joseph Roman Catholic Church. The next stop is at Blaj, but up there we can visit Beaton, Mediash, Kopsha Micah. If you found it interesting to travel through Dracula's country with me, please subscribe, and I hope in the next episode we will continue through other wonderful areas of Romania. Also, for more information, you can write to me on the email address on the screen. Thank you.